Labour's pledge to recruit an extra 10,000 police officers has been overshadowed by a stumbling and error-strewn interview by Diane Abbott in which the Shadow Home Secretary repeatedly struggled to explain how the promise would be funded. In the interview with Nick Ferrari on Tuesday, described by the Conservatives as excruciating, Abbott frequently paused, shuffled her papers and gave out the wrong figures. When asked about her performance, the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, insisted he was not embarrassed by what many pundits called a car crash interview. Abbott initially said that recruiting 10,000 officers would cost only £300,000. After an apology and some hesitation, she gave a different figure. No. Sorry. They will cost. It will cost about 80M, she said above the sound of turning pages. But when it was pointed out that this would involve paying the additional officers only £8,000, Abbott hesitated further. At one stage she mistakenly suggested Labour was planning to recruit an extra 250,000 officers, after making an earlier error that it was 25,000 officers. She then wrongly denied claiming she had said Labour planned to recruit 250,000 officers. Before partially regaining her composure, Abbott then read out what appeared to be annually costed figures from the party. She said, "In year 1 we are getting ready to recruit. But in year 2 the cost will be £64 3M. In year 3 the cost will be £139 1M. Year 4, the cost will be £217M and year 5, the cost will be £298M and that can be amply covered by reversing the cuts in capital gains tax." Later Abbott admitted she misspoke but insisted she was in command of her brief. The Conservatives seized on Abbott's apparent lack of grasp on the figures as an example of its claims about the risks to the economy of a Labour government. The Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, said, "Diane Abbott has laid bare the chaos Britain would face if Jeremy Corbyn is voted into Downing Street." Earlier, the Conservatives had dismissed the policing proposal as nonsensical and claimed Labour had already committed the same savings to fund other pledges. Abbott's answer to this was more coherent. She told LBC, "The Conservatives would say that we've not promised the money to any area. We have just pointed out that the cuts in capital gains tax will cost the taxpayer over £2, and there are better ways of spending that money." She added, "As we roll out our manifesto process, we are specifically saying how we will fund specific proposals. We will fund the 10,000 extra police officers by using some, not all, but just some of the £2." Abbott was later mobbed by reporters asking about the interview on her way to an appearance on the Daily Politics. She told them, "I'm completely on top of my brief. I misspoke this morning. It was the 6th interview out of 7. I do know the figures." On the Daily Politics, Abbott was impassive as she was made to listen to the interview again. "You need to ask why the Conservatives are so anxious to move the debate away from the 20,000 police officers lost since 2010, she said. But, again, Abbott was caught out by falsely stating that she had given the correct figures in other interviews. "If I didn't know my figures, why was I able to do 6 other interviews and give the figures correctly?" Abbott asked. The interviewer, Joe Coburn, pointed out she had not given any figures about the costing of the proposals in the other interviews. Campaigning in Southampton, Corbyn defended Abbott. He told Sky News. She corrected the figure and that's the figure, 300M. The cost of the extra police officers. And it will be paid for by not going ahead with the cuts in capital gains tax. Asked if he found her performance embarrassing, he replied, "Not at all. We have corrected the figure. And it will be absolutely clear now, today, and in the manifesto. I'm not embarrassed in the slightest." Abbott is a close friend of Corbyn, and one of his most important left-wing allies in the shadow cabinet.